Fast forward to 2016, and Darebin became the first city in the world to declare a climate emergency. And that there in front of you is our climate emergency plan, just a bit of a shape of it. And it might not be easy to see on screen there, but that sort of chart there that you can see on the left-hand side is a depiction of our emissions. And what was really important is that in declaring a climate emergency, we knew we needed to go beyond talking about what was required, but actually talking about who needed to act. And this enabled us to make the case to say that the vast majority of our emissions in Darebin were actually outside of the power of both council and often the individual residents. And so we needed to mobilise significant action, unprecedented action at other levels of government. We also had to go forward with a message of hope, and that was the notion that it is possible to restore a safe climate. We need to maintain that message, but we need to also see that mass mobilisation, and that's what we're really proud of doing. And critical to that is actually the restructuring of the economy at scale and speed. So it's wonderful to have that sort of language in a council document. It's another thing to put it into action. Thanks, Tim. So we set some very specific objectives as part of this, and key to that was about mobilisation and leadership. And critical to that as well was about building community resilience. And all we have to do is look at what's happened over recent months to understand how important it is for people to be connected, whether or not governments are acting or not. The community needs to stay together, stick together, work together, and have a common focus. And one of the things that, for me, is really striking is that as we connect people into that course of action, what is possible in response to a climate emergency and towards a Green New Deal becomes very real for people. So once someone has solar on their roof, or they manage to put a battery on their property, or they start thinking about sharing their energy with their neighbours, suddenly they have that sense of agency. And that, as Greens members, we know that fully, but it's something profoundly different to actually get people to experience that directly. So I think for me, it's all about connecting people into action all the time and advocating for system change. Thanks, Tim. One thing that you may or may not know is that we have this fantastic model of mobilisation in Victoria. It says there that 70 out of 79 councils are parts of regional alliances to address climate change, known as greenhouse alliances. In fact, it's now all 79 councils, which is fantastic. And these councils have worked together for, in some cases, for 2 decades, creating local projects, renewable energy generation, energy efficiency, community connectedness. What we have seen in every one of those climate alliances, there are projects that have actually delivered real jobs for local people and a real transition towards a renewable energy future. One of the things that's striking is that when we've had Conservative governments or governments that are slow to act on climate change in Victoria, these climate alliances have kept going. And in fact, they underpin the sort of structures that we'll need under a Green New Deal model, which is how do we enable communities wherever they are in Victoria actually be able to be part of that conversation, be part of that action, and be part of that change. Thanks, Tim. So one thing that we have done, and this is a project that Darebin Council has funded and led over the last couple of years, is to effectively mobilise local governments together. So we've brought about 48 councils together, effectively 1,000 people across the state, to build the largest procurement of renewable energy in the country of any government alliance. This is going to result in 250 gigawatt hours of new renewable energy, most likely a combination of wind and solar, and it actually accounts for 45% of all the electricity consumed by local governments in this state. It's the equivalent, as you can see there, of taking 47,000 homes or 87,000 cars off the fossil fuel grid, which for us is a profound example of what state governments should do. The fact that a little council in Melbourne's northern suburbs led this project, funded this project, and got a range of councils together, including some of our most conservative councils, come together, for me is an example of what a Green New Deal is all about. It's actually about bringing people into the mix and actually delivering an agenda which is about renewables, it's about jobs, and in every single case, every single council is also saving money, which means more money for libraries, childcare, those sorts of activities that are really important to connecting a community. Thanks, Tim. So one of the things that's happened in the last year, and Shane's been part of this journey with me as well, is recognising that we now have 1,737 governments around the world that have declared a climate emergency, which started here in Melbourne at the City of Darebin. It also means that we've got 96 governments in Australia and 32 of those are in Victoria. So we set about how do we actually bring them together to actually create an alliance that builds that public pressure, builds that pressure within government and within industry to deliver that, what we would describe here as a Green New Deal, but in broader terms is really that significant transition to a renewable energy future and mass action on the climate emergency. So Climate Emergency Australia is on the brink of being publicly launched, so you're getting it a bit of an exclusive. We have brought together these councils, and the ACT government, through Shane, has been involved in this too, to build a commitment to work together, to mobilise our power, and to look at whether it's the advocacy work we have to do or whether it's the massive projects to deliver the change that we need. And for me, that map is just a striking example of communities just getting on with it. And for me, it's what the Greens have been part of for such a long time. Thanks, Tim. Lastly, I just wanted to touch on this, and for me, this is also part of the wonderful work that our state MPs do, and it's where the alliance between local government and state Greens MPs and even federal Greens MPs as well are able to deliver real change to the actual structures that influence people's lives. So here on the on one side of this page, you can see Greta Thunberg in 2018, basically having her first protest on the steps of her parliament. In exactly the same month in Victoria, the state government basically updated its Planning and Environment Act. And if you do a word search of this act, there is not a single reference to climate change. Now, this is the act that actually defines and describes the rules for which all development happens in Victoria. It also sets up the framework for the protection of our environment. So for me, this is a striking example of where a piece of legislation that should be all about action on the climate emergency completely misses the point. And it's wonderful that just about a week ago, we had the launch of Planners Declare, which is the alliance of local planners who have come together and said they have a massive role to play in action on the climate emergency. So we are starting to see sectors that previously were very much neutral to being involved in these public policy debates coming out and saying, we've had enough, we need to see the action at state and federal levels as well as local council. I'll end it there. Thank you.